For the next hour, you'll be leaving the Show Me state and entering the Show Me the Money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guides for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Welcome to Show Me the Money with Randy and Jake Floyd, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about current events. Also, we're going to talk about 7 retirement myths that we're going to debunk, answers to questions about IRAs, 401ks, and annuities, and finally, how to know if you're really prepared for retirement. My name's Jeff Shade, and as always, I'm just here to ask the questions. But the words of wisdom and solid advice, they come from Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. We're at full strength this morning. How are you, Randy?
Doing very well, Jeff. How about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And Jake, how is this fine first Saturday of March treating you so far?
I'm just glad all that snow is over with. I'm ready to get outside and enjoy the weather.
Yeah, well, don't say it too soon. We were talking off the air, Randy and I, about March coming in like, well, what is it, like a lion going out by a lamb? Could be the other way around. It's been known to snow here in March in this part of Missouri, but hopefully that is behind us. I'm with you. I'm ready for spring. Anyway, we're ready for a good show lined up for us here today, gentlemen. Let's start with current events like we do most Saturday mornings. Germany is having an election. What does that mean for us and the rest of the world?
Yeah, so Germany, they've had quite a shakeup over there. We've got the left, the ultra-conservatives, and the centrists over there. And the guy that got elected is probably more centrist than he is right or left, but he is more conservative than where we have been. So we feel like if you go back and look at J.D. Vance's address when he was over there, and he pretty much called them out as socialists and woke. So they were a little upset about that. But really what's happened over that time, Jeff, is we've noticed that a lot of Europe has started to rally around the idea that, yeah, you know what? It's kind of like what we experienced here for a while, where everything was going kind of the wrong direction. And we're starting to see Europe start to come back to center. And so we think that's going to be a good thing over there. This guy's got a huge axe to grind with the world. He's going to learn, though, right quick that, while Germany's a great country in a lot of ways, it's still not that big in the world scheme of things. And, he's talking about how he might support Zelensky and be his savior. I don't think they are big enough to do that, but we'll see how it shakes out.
Well, a lot of countries in Europe, it appears that Germany happens to be one of the biggest countries. Do you think that Germany has the most influence over the rest of Europe?
That will remain to be seen. They certainly have had in the past because their economic power has been stronger than the rest.
Right. I think it's mainly a monetary influence that gives them the most power because they're the only one that pays their bills on time and isn't drowning in debt. So, and while every country is to some extent drowning in debt, Germany is the beacon of Europe and is kind of single-handedly holding together Spain and Italy and Greece and some of these other countries that basically they just don't believe in paying their bills.
They don't believe in paying their bills. Well, that's not a good strategy, I don't think. Certainly not.
If they had a country credit score, they would not be high on the list.
Well, Germany, when I think about Germany, I think about the things that come from Germany. I guess there's beer, there's your BMW, your Audis, and your Mercedes-Benzes. Anything else that we get from Germany? Why should we really be too concerned about Germany?
I don't know that we should be concerned about Germany. I think ultimately what Trump wants to have is the realization. He wants Europe to understand that they need us.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it's a little bit like your 13-year-old son, right? You can tell them, hey, this is how the world works, but sometimes you have to let them figure it out on their own. And I think they're going to figure it out real quick. And then I think they're going to come back to the table and go, please save us. And I think we will, but I think it'll be on terms that are much more favorable to the American people.
Well, and you have experience with a 13-year-old son as well, too, so you know whereof you speak at this point. A little shout out there to Trevor, since he did the show. Has he reminded you, good luck doing this show without me lately or not?
No, not lately. Lately. Just that first week after. Yeah, he's like, hey, good luck.
Well, we hope to have him on the air again very, very soon. Anyway, let's continue here. Inflation, it's ticked up a little bit in January, up to 3%. What do you make of that, and should we really be worried about it at all?
Yeah, the mandate, of course, is to have 2% inflation, which basically means that every 36 years you need twice as much money, right, to make things work the same, supposedly. So we always look at that rule of 72, whatever your interest rate that you earn is, or whatever your inflation rate is divided into that, is how many years it takes to require twice as much money. So basically at 2%, 36 years, at 3%, 24 years is what it would take. While it's not where we want to be necessarily, it's not nearly as bad and ugly as it was looking over our shoulder in the past. And I do think that it will come into focus, and I think that we will be able to push inflation down, provided we can slow down government spending, which we're working on very diligently. We can drill, baby drill, get the price of oil pushed down. I think that will help us to push inflation down across many fronts in this country and help us to be able to get to where we can lower interest rates and have good growth.
When you look back historically, as you said, during the Carter years, what inflation was, 3% is really not that bad, especially when you look at countries like Argentina. They've gotten their inflation down. They've gotten it down to 194%, I just read. The reason that it got up that high is because every time they needed money, they just simply printed more money. Seems that they were on the same track that we were before common sense began to kick in here a little bit.
Yeah, and I think Javier Milei down there is definitely doing a very good job. He's got a 9 or 10 month head start on us as far as he's doing basically the same thing down there that we're doing here with the Department of Government Efficiency, and he loves that idea. In fact, he gave Elon Musk a silver chainsaw entitled Doge on it, basically, so he could.
I saw that.
Very, very interesting to watch, world leaders that are like-minded come together and to just really share ideas. And ultimately, I mean, none of this is really that complicated. It's like, do we need this? No. If no, then chop it off. It doesn't always go painlessly, and obviously these are people that have jobs and things like that. But at the same time, if you do nothing all day at work, you know that you do nothing all day at work every day. And so this shouldn't really be that big a surprise to you if your government arm is getting lopped off because it's unnecessary and you're spending money on things that maybe are worthy of spending money on, but not taxpayer money without their permission.
What do you think about Elon Musk asking government workers to tell him what they did today or what they did yesterday?
I think that should 100% be the norm. And if their boss can't already tell them what their employees are doing, you already have a problem, right? I mean, if you run a business, you know what your people are doing because that money's coming out of your pocket. The problem is nobody seems to care what money's coming out of the government's pocket. And so we're seeing some accountability for the first time and really since taxation began, honestly, if we're being serious about it. And I think it's a great thing. I really challenge people, if you are not a fan of Elon Musk, and I suspect that a lot of people listening to this are doing what I'm doing when I wake up in the morning and seeing what he's doing. I do a little fist pump. If you're not a fan of Elon Musk, you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose? Why would he do this to himself? Unless it was absolutely necessary. I mean, can you imagine the death threats and all the things he's getting from all these people? He doesn't need that. It's not helping his businesses. It's not helping. And I think if you asked him why he's doing it, I think he's like, none of the rest of this matters if humanity explodes or implodes. And so I would challenge people to really try to look at it dispassionately and go, maybe he knows something that you don't if you disagree with everything that he's doing. And maybe we can't just print money forever and ever and ever and expect it to continue going the way it has been.
Right. I think one of the things I hear, and I think I told you this, Jeff, I said, my wife, we've been married 43 years, and she hadn't watched more than 10 minutes of news with me since we've been married until Donald Trump became president.
Yeah.
And now I wake up, I get up at 4. Sometimes she's up before me, and she's in there watching the news over the night,
Wow.
So anyway, I think the interesting part is there's still people out there that say, oh, they're only doing it for the money. He has more money than the majority or a lot of the economies in the countries around the globe. He doesn't need money. If he started spending all the money he wanted every day, he couldn't live long enough to spend it. But there's people that think that, and at the end of the day, this is not really that, like Jake said, it's just not really that difficult. If I run my company here at Floyd Financial Group the way our government runs things and has run things, I don't have the ability to print money.
Just go ahead and print us up a new batch in the back here.
I need a quick 100K here. Let's just turn on the printer.
Mimeograph machine. Remember the mimeograph?
Oh gosh, yes. I can still smell those things too. When you were a kid, you knew that test was coming. Talking with Randy and Jake Floyd here at Floyd Financial Group. You guys make me laugh. Our phone number here is 417-889-7233. Glad you could join us this morning. We're talking about current events. We talked about inflation being 3%. How has this affected the market despite these inflationary concerns?
Yeah, I think everybody's a little bit concerned about inflation, but here's the thing that they're really concerned about right now, I think, is everybody's kind of trying to brace and see what happens, what actually does happen with tariffs and how that's going to affect earnings. We've already seen some companies adjust guidance looking forward. Now, what I mean by guidance, Jeff, is all these publicly traded companies, the S&P 500 is really what we watch. That's the majority of all business in America anyway, and globally for that matter. So what we look at there is what do they project their revenue to be and what do they project their earnings to be for the business they've done. And so as long as earnings hold up strong and they can foresee their way to increase sales or increase profit, that bodes pretty well for the stock market. So some of the concerns out there right now is what is the profitability looking forward going to be? So that's made the market, pretty choppy here of late. Do I think ultimately we're still going up? Absolutely, I do. So it just depends on how long this Ukraine thing takes and also just how effective Donald is at getting rid of the fat. And I got to tell you, I think Tom Homan is a superhero. I love that guy. Yep. How he, we've already got the border pretty well shut down. Then, of course, we got Congress getting ready to act and pass the big, beautiful bill, we hope, with taxes.
Yeah.
It's going to be fantastic, folks.
Those few things have to kind of shake out before I think we can get some really solid direction. The other thing I think that is important, though, is businesses looking to Donald Trump also to get rid of some regulation and give us some certainty. Business likes to be able to make plans, right?
Yeah,
you
right.
Make plans if you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, if you feel really uneasy about it. So that's some of the things we're waiting, to have those things shake out. And I think we'll see a really good upturn for the market then.
And finally, hopes for more Fed rate cuts have dimmed as Jerome Powell notes hot CPI numbers means we're not quite there yet. Talking with Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. Glad you could join us here on this Saturday morning. As always, if you'd like to get in and sit down with Randy and Jake at Floyd Financial Group, have a little conversation about current events or basically anything on your mind that will affect your retirement. You want some questions about maybe something as basic as to when to take Social Security on up the ladder? We can talk to you about that. No cost, no obligation for this. It's just a casual conversation. You can get your conversation started by calling 417-889-7233. That's the number here at Floyd Financial Group. If you want to call this weekend, go ahead. Leave your name, telephone number, and Ashley will give you a call back during the week and set up that appointment for you. Or you can wait until Monday, but we are waiting for you. We'd love to meet you and talk to you, give you a hand with your journey towards a confident retirement. 417-889-7233. Again, no cost, no obligation, and no judgment. You can also find out more about us online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Randy, Jake, time for break. When we come back, we'll be talking about 7 retirement myths debunked when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Randy and Jake Floyd, with Jeff Shea.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about 7 retirement myths. We're going to debunk them. Remember, what was the old show there? Is it still on there, the one where they are always debunking all the myths? What,
yeah, it was called Mythbusters. Anyway, that was a good show, but there are a lot of myths out there, retirement myths. And I'm sure there are many more than 7, but we're going to pick probably the top 7 here and debunk those. The first myth I want you to comment on, Randy or Jake, is that everyone should follow the 4% rule. Not really a rule, it's a suggestion, but still for many people, it's not a good suggestion. Why is that?
I think when we look at where that would have come from, always when people get to retirement age, we have to be concerned about them spending down their money. In fact, it's something like 68% of people say they fear running out of money more than they fear dying. Mm-hmm. So when you get to retirement and you can't or don't want to work anymore, we have to be sure that you don't draw your assets down too fast. And, one thing we know, Jeff, is that markets, whether that be the interest market, the stock market, the real estate market, the gold market, the cattle market, the pork market, whatever it is, all those things have volatility and they change. So the thing that was designed to do is to prevent people from spending too much money and getting in trouble when those markets adjust. So the rule of thumb is if you go out online and just look at what's a reasonable amount to withdraw from my retirement accounts, the 4% rule is going to come up, and it basically says this. If you had $1 million in your retirement account, 4% of that is $40,000 that you can withdraw. Each year, then you could adjust for inflation. So if it's up 3%, you get a 3% raise on your $40,000 to $41,200, and so on as time rolls forward. Well, people say, doesn't the S&P 500 return 8 or 9 or 10%? Or if you have Ramsey, he'll tell you it makes 12 every year,
Yeah.
But just really not true. And what we have is markets are up generally most of the time, but it's those down cycles that if you're pulling too much money out, you can get yourself in a situation where you're in a downward spiral. And the 4% rule was designed to really kind of, and I hate to even use this word, but to kind of dumb it down so that people didn't get themselves in trouble. So we have to think about, how are we invested? What's the downside risk that comes along with how we're invested? What is the sequence of returns possibility? Depending on when we start and what interest rates are. One of the old rules too out there is don't fight the Fed. So if the Fed's raising interest rates, that's generally not good for the market. If he's lowering interest rates, that's generally good for the market. There's a lot of things that come into play when we look at this. And so the 4% rule, is it for everybody? Some people don't even need 4% of their retirement account. Some people need more than that. And so we have to talk about how that works and how to make sure that we don't run out of money. But as a general rule of thumb, it's probably okay. When it comes to doing retirement income planning, it needs to go much deeper than just, hey, take 4%.
Yeah, and it all depends upon the individual. I guess if you got millions of dollars, 4% could be pretty good. But if you got $250,000, 4% is just not going to work. Next myth is Social Security is bankrupt. I've got to take it now at 62 because it's not going to be here. What do you guys think about that one?
Well, for the last 30 years, I've been hearing that it was going to be broke in 2015 and then 2020. And granted, there's some problems out there and it probably needs more money. They're saying now 2035, I think, is when it's supposed to be to where it can no longer support what's going on at current income levels and probably have to be reduced.
Of course, if you can get these 150-year-olds off the Social Security system, then that might help.
Hey, my aunt's 107. She's still got it too, but she's legitimately alive.
There you go.
Absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, Social Security's, I don't know if you can call it bankrupt, as you said, 2035. That is the date that it is expected to keep going unless we make changes. But there are going to be some changes that are going to be made between now and then. If I'm taking Social Security now, or I'm going to be getting it in a year or two, Randy, do you think there's going to be any change for us?
Here's what I would say. If you're near retirement, let's say you're 60 plus years old, I don't think you're going to see a lot of change for us there. I think if you're below 60, you might see some interesting changes get ready to come down the pike on that. But I will say this too. As we start to look at who we're paying and how much we're paying, it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out with Doge and what Elon is going to be able to find. I don't know really what to expect at this point, but I do know that part of the problem is we have like 70 million people on Social Security. And I believe that there's far too many able-bodied people that haven't paid into the system that are on it for some reason that needs to be investigated.
Right.
That's my personal take on it. But I do think that they will keep Social Security propped up. I do think there's some things that they can do to help that. If we start on both ends, how do we get a little bit more paid into Social Security? I'm not saying we need to raise people's taxes. I think maybe we need to look at some areas in business where people are able to escape paying Social Security tax sometimes. But I also think we just need to work on the other end with like Elon and Doge is doing to figure out who shouldn't be on there. So I think that's the two biggest things we need to think about.
So we'll partially bust that myth that Social Security is bankrupt. It's in trouble, but not quite bankrupt, and we'll put a yet on the end of that. Next myth is cash and cash equivalents are king in retirement. What do you think about that one?
Well, that depends on the situation we're in at the time, right? Now, no doubt, cash is king when you need a new car, when you need the roof fixed, when you got a claim on your car and you got to come up with $1,000 deductible or whatever it is on your insurance. Yes, you need cash and you need it every month because I don't know about you, Jeff, around my house, the bills come in about every 30 days.
Oh, yeah.
Now, fortunately, today I don't have nearly as many of those 30-day bills as I used to have,
Right.
but it's important that you got to have income, you got to have cash, you got to have some ready cash. A lot of times people come in and say, well, how much cash should I have sitting around? Well, somewhere between 3 and 6 months probably is what I recommend that people need to have. And you can have that in savings accounts. You can have it today in CDs, money market accounts. All those are paying a little more interest than they used to. And then there's lots of things that are convertible to cash really easy, but ready cash that you can keep the wolf away from the door and whatever happens. I think 3 to 6 months is a really good idea.
I think, again, it's a partial bust on that one, that cash and cash equivalents are king in retirement. That is one that I guess it just depends on the individual situation. But, yeah, I've always got at least 3 to 6 months worth of just $100 bills sitting around. I don't know if that's a great idea or not. Next myth, the only way to prepare for long-term care needs is a long-term care insurance policy. Now, there's a big one.
That's a big one right there. So, everybody has to think about the possibility of, are they going to need some type of long-term care, medical care that they cannot provide for themselves in their lifetime? And the answer to that question is most of us will need some of that care. We never know when that may come or when that may occur or how it may occur. But it's a conversation everybody needs to have. And for me to tell you that the only way to cover it is through long-term care insurance is probably not true. But we'll talk about there's several different ways to plan for that. Number one, if you have a lot of IRA money, which most people today, most of their money has come from 401k, 403b, 457, IRAs, that sort of thing. You got a potential tax burden there if you had to pay for care. And I think everybody should probably look at, what does long-term care insurance cost me? What does it look like? And find out what their comfort level is with it. Now, there's several types of long-term care insurance. So today we have the traditional kind, which says, hey, what does it cost to be in a nursing home today in dollars? And what's it going to be in the future? So I build in an inflation fighter. So let's say today it's $250 a day, which is probably not far off of what the average is, even here in middle America where we live, about $7,500 a month. And then looking forward, is it going to increase 3 or 4%? The answer to that question is yes. Per year, it's going to increase that much. So we build in an inflation fighter. That all works fine. And what generally ends up happening is the premiums go up because the insurance company's on the hook for more money because of inflation looking down the road. And people sometimes get priced out of the market there, and that's really not a good thing. I don't like that. And then all of a sudden, they've spent all this money, and they got absolutely nothing for it. So I don't really necessarily like that setup. Now, the other setup can be where we use some type of an asset and commit a portion or all of that asset to some type of long-term care. So asset-based long-term care just says, hey, I'm going to take $100,000 and set it aside. There are insurance concepts out there that allow us to triple that for long-term care. So I take $100,000, and the day I put that deposit in, I've got $300,000 for long-term care. But if I never use it for long-term care, the death benefit, which is usually the principal and some more on top of that I deposited, that also goes to my beneficiary. So that way I don't have to worry about rates going up. I don't have to worry about not using it and losing the money. There's also annuity concepts that have long-term care riders on there. And then I would say this too, for people that have more than $1 million today, there's some other things we could look at probably. And certainly if you're in the $2 to $5 million range, there's other things to look at that might help you in more ways than one to help long-term care, as well as planning for leaving an inheritance to your kids. And yes, all this sounds very expensive and can be, but I will tell you this much, when it comes down to it and people really need long-term care, it's going to be something that we will wish we have addressed if we have not.
Right, and you used to do a seminar, 4 ways to pay. Out of the hip pocket was the first. That's, stroking the check there. Not most people are plumb to do that. You used to say, aid in attendance. Right. If you've been in the military, you might have some help with long-term care there. You want to check into that. Then, of course, asset-based and maybe long-term care policies. So there are several ways to pay for long-term care insurance. Okay, myth number 5, financial plans and retirement plans. Those are just for the rich people. I don't think so. What do you think?
Well, I would say this. Everybody has a different definition of rich. So we have to kind of quantify that. And so retirement plans are only for the rich. So if I have less money, it's ultimately more important for me to have the best plan than if I have too much money. Mm-hmm. Now, people say, how can you have too much money? It's kind of like having excess funds. You ever had any excess funds, Jeff?
I don't think so. I've always found a use for those funds.
Yeah, most people would say the same thing. Mm-hmm. But financial planning is for all people, because ultimately what we want is we want to do the best that we can with what we have. Right. Whether that be $100,000 or $5 million or $10 million or $12 million, whatever that number is. So financial plans, people say, well, I've done pretty well. I got all this money stacked up. So one of the challenges that we have sometimes is we don't know what it is that we don't know. And part of our job is to help educate people on things that they don't know and things that you wouldn't know because our system here in our education system doesn't really support the understanding. And I will tell you this much, things get really complex later in life when you have money. Money is a huge responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
And can be a huge problem if you haven't planned on how it's going to go to the next generation.
Yeah, and as you said, financial plans, retirement just for rich people, and it depends upon, as you said, how you define rich. But as you said, $200,000, a plan's going to be way more important to me than maybe somebody who's got $5 million. And we always say here at Floyd Financial Group, we'll meet you where you are. So if you've got a couple $100,000 and you're saying, well, I don't have enough money to deal with those guys, you are wrong. Financial plan is very, very important to you. So we're going to bust that myth. Next myth here, Randy, is estate planning does not apply to me because I don't have an estate.
Yeah, well, everybody has an estate. So an estate seems like, in fact, I used to hear this all the time. Well, I've been told that if I don't have $1 million, I don't need an estate plan. I will tell you, we all have an estate and we want things to go as smoothly as possible. Now, I say that. I have one gentleman that told me, he says, when I die, I want to create the biggest mess possible.
No,
I'm serious. I'm serious.
Yep.
And he has a substantial amount of money, and he has since had a medical incident where he is now in assisted living, and he's not 100% coherent where he can make financial decisions now.
Right.
So the long and the short of it is he would never put a beneficiary on any of his money.
Oh, my gosh.
And since he didn't, guess what? All of his money and his estate's going to go through probate.
Wow.
Which is kind of like filing a lawsuit against your kids.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they have to deal with the court system and the waiting and the paying of an attorney and all that to get that settled. So let's just say this. Estate planning, everybody has an estate and everybody needs some level of it. Some people need very minimal. Some people need a whole lot more.
Well, I don't have a big estate, but I do have it specified as to who gets the 72 Mercury that's sitting out there in the garage at this point. But anyway, if you have anything, certainly it does behoove you to have some sort of a financial plan or some sort of an estate plan to decide who gets that. If you love your spouse, if you love your kids, you need an estate plan. Final myth here, I want to see if we can bust this one, is I can just set it and forget it when it comes to my plan and portfolio. Just buy the S&P 500 and you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, that's one that we can definitely call a myth. So let's just think about what's happened to us since 2020. We had COVID-19. We shut the world down. The market plummeted. We printed $6.5 trillion. The market came back and skyrocketed. Interest rates were near zero because that's why we had 2% and 3% mortgages. Now interest rates in March of 22, Jerome Powell said, hey, I think interest rates are too low. Over the next 14 months, he raised it from 0 to 5.5%. That's a little bit of a change in a portfolio, right? Where CDs were paying 0.5%, now they're paying 5.25%. Now they've kind of turned the corner. They're back down into the 4 range. Money markets were 5%. Stock markets in 2022, when the Federal Reserve was raising interest rates, fell 20% in all of 2022. Then in 2023, after he kind of slowed down a little bit, the market rallied back, but it took all of 2023 to get back to December of 2021. And then we started to make a little bit of money again in 2024. But my idea here is just in that short time, look at all of the changes that happened. And you need somebody that's watching that stuff while you're out fishing, playing golf, traveling to the south of France, or wherever you want to go, right? You need somebody at the helm that's watching that and really monitoring what's going on and able to communicate with you and keep you in the know about what's happening in the world. Because let's face it, nobody wants to retire and be looking over their shoulder all the time, wondering if it's going to last.
So these 7 retirement myths that we have debunked here with Randy and Jake Floyd are: everyone should follow the 4% rule, Social Security's bankrupt, cash and cash equivalents are king in retirement, the only way to prepare for long-term care needs is long-term care insurance, financial plans, retirement plans are for rich people, estate planning doesn't apply to me, and finally, I can set it and forget it when it comes to my plan and portfolio. Those are myths. If you want the truth, you want to find out what's real in your world, call us here at Floyd Financial Group at 417-889-7233. Sit down with Randy or Jake or both here at Floyd Financial Group and ask the questions that you need to get the answers to put you on a path towards a confident retirement. Again, there's no cost. There is no obligation to this. Certainly, there is no judgment. So make that call this weekend, 417-889-7233. Leave your name and number. Ashley will call you back during the week and set up a convenient time for you. Or as always, you can call it during the week, or you can go out to the website. Contact us there from the contact page. It's FloydFinancialGroup.com. Gentlemen, time for a break. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking a little bit about IRAs, 401ks, and annuities and more when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
We're back with your financial catch of the day, and it's a big one. Here's more Show Me the Money Radio with your hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about IRAs, 401ks, and annuities.
Randy, a lot of people have questions about those three things. Let's first off start talking about IRAs, individual retirement accounts. Some people say that an IRA isn't allowed to hold an annuity. Now, I think it used to be that way. Is it that way anymore?
So the old argument used to be, well, there's no reason to put an IRA into an annuity contract because the principal of it and whatever it earns continues to be tax deferred until the client draws money out. So that is true that the IRA is not changed by putting it into an annuity contract. It maintains its tax deferral. It doesn't get any additional tax deferral. But the annuities of old used to be, hey, give me a lump sum of money and I'll guarantee you a monthly income. Now, we still have those and they still work that way, but there's much better tools today in the annuity world. After that, it looked kind of like a CD. That was the multi-year guarantee annuity. You maybe sign up for 5 years and, get 5% interest, just kind of like a CD, only it was an insurance company that held it rather than a bank. So then along the way, we created these things called variable annuities, which basically was where you create this annuity contract and you basically monitor the stock market. The challenge with those is they became very expensive to own. They couldn't really guarantee your principal, which was one of the founding ideas of that before, because you were subject to market volatility. But they did put a rider on there called an income rider that would help you to maintain an income level. Now, it didn't protect your principal necessarily in the variable annuity, but it protected your income. And then along the way, people said, well, the multi-year guarantee annuity, like the CD, was a great thing. And, the variable annuity, when markets are good, is a really great thing. So how about we combine those things? And they made this thing called a fixed indexed annuity. Fixed meaning it guarantees your principal. Index meaning it tracks an index like the S&P 500. And there's many, many different ones today. So basically, the IRA being held in an annuity contract is not a major deal. And in many ways, it's a way, especially it's a way to do what? To either get guaranteed interest if you do a multi-year guarantee annuity. Number two, if you want a variable annuity, they're still out there so that you can get maximum upside, but you better be willing to take the downside if things go bad. And then there's the fixed index that says, hey, I like the fixed side of things, but I also like being attached to the market. So I'm part chicken, but I'm part bull, right? So I like that one because it gives me gains when the market's good.
Right.
And it protects my gains that I've made when the market's bad. And so I know I went a little deeper in there than just, hey, can an annuity be held in, as an IRA? And the answer to that question is yes. But I think people need to understand, why do we use these annuity contracts? There's a specific reason, and generally it's so that people can protect gains, get income, and have growth in their accounts.
I understand that annuity can also be held in a 401k, but that wasn't always the case, was it?
No, that's a newer rule, I think, from maybe 2019, 2020, when the Secure Act came through. And we're going to see more and more of that because as I think more and more government programs are falling short of really giving people what they want in retirement. Social Security was never meant to be your whole retirement. It's only supposed to be a portion. But I think people are going to be looking to, hey, how do I get maximum gains and how do I take the worry out of it? How do I take the scary money stuff out, right? And this is one of the ways to do that. All your money doesn't go into an IRA annuity, but a portion of it, it could make sense for it to go in there. And the type that you have depends on you as an individual. It goes back to the age-old question. Would you rather have $50,000 a year guaranteed for life or $1 million?
Yeah.
Well, if I can make a 5% return on my million, I make the $50,000 and I get to keep my million. Versus if I have a pension plan and I decide to take a $50,000 payment, I give up my lump sum. I like to have my cake and eat it too. Of course, I'm a baby boomer.
Yeah.
And many of the people listening to this show are baby boomers, and they get that.
Talking with Randy and Jake Floyd at Floyd Financial Group. We're talking about IRAs and 401ks and RMDs and all that sort of fun stuff. When it comes to an annuity, you know, I keep hearing I hate annuities, and you should too, and I think they're talking about variable annuities. And you talked about the fixed index annuity. On the surface, they seem great. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do this? Is there any reason that you can think of why an annuity may not be a good thing to have in a portfolio if you're looking for guaranteed income?
Well, no, there's really no good reason. The thing that I would say to that is the only thing that's really a negative in today's world, especially if we look at some type of a fixed or a fixed index annuity, is the fact that, no, we don't get 100% of the upside of the market, but nobody ever does. I mean, people say, oh, yeah, I got, 100%. Well, no, you really don't. In fact, as I look at most of the 401ks around the country right now, most of the money is invested in these things called target dated funds. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you right now, if you want to compare them to the S&P 500, which is what most people look to as a benchmark, even globally, they're looking to what's the S&P doing, and can I match up to it or can I exceed that? When you look at that, those target dated funds always, and I mean without exception, lag the S&P 500. So nobody gets 100% of the upside. But if I can get the lion's share of the upside and protect my gains, why in the world would I not do that? The only thing is annuity contracts come with a term, kind of like a CD or a bond. So if you go out and buy a 10-year treasury bond, you have a 10-year time horizon. So the government says, hey, give us whatever money you want to give us. We'll guarantee you an interest payment, and at the end of that term, we give your money back. Well, the annuity contract with a multi-year guarantee works the same way. But we have this thing called a surrender period. So if it's 5 years, it's got an amount of surrender that you may have to pay if you exceed pulling, in most cases, 10% per year out of that contract. Well, we already talked about earlier in the program that the 4% rule is the rule of thumb. So I get 2.5 times the rule of thumb every year liquid out of my annuity contract. This is why we have sufficient liquidity in an annuity contract for most people, as long as we don't put all the money in the annuity contract. So we want to balance out what makes sense, give people plenty of liquid cash, but give them the opportunity to have some safety while they grow a portion of that money as well and not be 100% subject to the market. So that's one of the really good reasons to use the annuity contract. But again, this period of what some people call a lockup or a lockdown of the money, it's no different than anything else, a CD or a bond. We just have to make sure that when we go into these things, we go in with our eyes wide open. It's a part of the plan. It's an integral part of that plan that makes sense for each client, and it's different for every client as to how much they might want to have in an annuity contract.
Answers to some key issues about IRAs, 401ks, and annuities. That's what we're talking about with Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group here in our radio show, Show Me the Money. We're on the air for you each and every Saturday morning right here on KSGF. If you've got questions, 417-889-7233 is our telephone number, 417-889-7233. Let's talk a little bit more about 401ks, Randy. What do you think are the most important things that people listening should know about 401ks?
Yeah, so your 401k, I would say that first and foremost, if your company offers one, get involved and put in at least what they're going to match as to what you put in. So if they match up to 5% and they'll give you 5%, by all means, put it in there because free money is always good. Now, you have a cure period, generally of 5 years, where if they're putting money in for you, if you haven't been there 5 years, you don't get full credit for that. But it's still in there, and free money is good. So do get invested and do that. Get in the habit of saving so that you're going to have something for retirement. The 401k horizons, we look out there at what the options are to invest in, depending on your age, will determine how you should probably be invested. If you have a long time horizon, you can be a lot more aggressive. If you're on a short clock, you need to be probably a little bit more conservative. And that's something that we can help people with and do help people with each and every day. But definitely get involved. I would say if you're a youngster and you have an option for a Roth 401k, unless you're just in a super huge tax bracket, it might make sense for your future to invest in the Roth or maybe a combination thereof.
And Randy, these days people have 2, 3, 4, 5 different jobs, so they may have 2, 3, 4, 5 different 401ks. Should they always roll these over into an IRA once they're done working, do you think?
Well, here's what I know about the 401ks that got left behind. They haven't been looked at sometimes in a decade. And once you're not employed by the company and you don't get involved in the annual meetings and that sort of thing, they're supposed to keep you in the know. And they will through emails and through publications. But most people haven't looked at those in a long time, and they forget because we get on with life. So I would say that, anytime that you move, you need to look at what you're going to do with that money. Either you're going to take it and move it to your new 401k at your new employer, or you're going to roll it out to an IRA. And what we need to do is help you understand and explain the difference between the two and why you might want to have it in an IRA rather than a 401k, and why you might want to have it in a 401k rather than an IRA. It kind of cuts both ways depending on the situation.
Right. With a 401k, of course, if you're still working, as you said, you can't ignore the free money. Many people do give a generous match there. But if you're not working, an IRA might be the answer for you. IRA generally does offer some more options. But if you do have questions about 401ks, IRAs, or annuities, anything we've talked about today in today's program, call 417-889-7233. Talk to Ashley there. She'll set you up with an appointment for you to come in and sit down with Randy and Jake and talk about really anything that you want to talk about, whether it's Social Security, long-term care, creating income. Should I be in the market? Should I not be in the market? Is an annuity right for me? We'll talk to you about anything. Certainly, there are no questions that are off limits. 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about us online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Randy and Jake, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to answer the age-old question, am I really prepared for retirement? We'll find out when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
People of the Ozarks, step away from the fishing pole and prepare to be shown the money, because we're back with more straight talk and honest answers with Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money. And in this segment, we'll be talking about, are we going to starve to death in retirement, or are we going to be okay?
Hopefully there's some sort of in-between area there, Randy. It's not one or the other. Am I ready for retirement? Yes, I'm ready for retirement. I was ready for retirement 10 years ago. But am I prepared for retirement? That is the question. So let's dive into that. It's not necessarily all or nothing here. So if I am ready for retirement and I ask myself, am I prepared for retirement? I guess there are two questions there, Randy. It's going to be financially and it's going to be emotionally. I think emotionally we're ready, but let's talk about the financial side of this. What is the first thing that we should be looking at? I think it's quite obvious, but why don't you reiterate for what I'm thinking here?
Right. Well, retirement, it's a journey.
Right.
Looking forward. And so anytime you leave to go on a trip or take a journey, you're generally going to have a roadmap. And so if you haven't really sat down to look at your retirement roadmap, it's something that you need to do. And it's something that we do here every day. We help people every day to get their retirement plan in place and even get retired. And so if you haven't sat down to really talk about all the little bullet points and the things that you need to think about, I would encourage you to give us a call, just because it's what we do. We've got a good checklist of what we need to run through, from Social Security to healthcare planning to long-term care planning to estate planning to income planning, investment planning, all those things. And you don't have to sit there and try to reinvent the wheel, because most people, and it's our system is just not geared to teaching us how to be done working. It teaches us a little bit about how to work sometimes, but not how to be done working. And the financial plan, comprehensive understanding where your income is going to come from, what it's going to do to your assets that you've worked a lifetime for as you pull that money out, what that looks like is going to be very important.
So we want to make sure that we built sufficient savings. That's number one. We want to build a monthly income budget sheet. Well, we may not call it a budget. We may call it bumpers. We want to stay within those bumpers. And I think it's important that you've worked with a financial planner if you're planning for retirement, because, as you said many times, Randy, you can spot things that the person who's retiring may not spot. It's spotting the trees for the forest. And you understand your retirement income needs, I think, is going to be the next one here. A lot of people think, well, when I get into retirement, I'm not going to spend as much money. But Randy, what is your experience with your clients that get into retirement? Are they spending less, more, or about the same?
So I think there's a disconnect, number one, between what my gross salary is and what my bring home is. And so one of the things we do is drill down on that, because, we're funding Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. We're also maybe funding a 401k along the way. And sometimes toward the end, we're funding a lot in there. So we may be thinking that we're spending a lot more money than we are. But I will say this too. As you get ready to retire, some people think, well, I'm going to only spend 50, 60% of what I used to spend when I was working. And that's just simply not true. I would say that for the most part, it's going to be pretty close to what you're used to because nobody wants to retire and go home and sit down and suck their thumb and go backwards.
But you don't need as much gross income in order to net the same amount in retirement because you're not funding retirement plans. You're not paying into Social Security. You're not paying FICA and all that kind of stuff. So I would say that while you spend about the same amount of money, you may only need to make 75, 80% of what you were making in order to net the same amount, spend the same amount. Now, like Randy said, if your goal is to go travel the world once you retire, you might spend 2 or 3 times what you're used to spending to make that happen. So that's why it's so important when we sit with people to really understand what it is that you want in retirement.
That's a good point, Jake. Net versus gross.
Yeah, and I think understanding what people want in retirement is probably what we spend more time on than anything in this office, is just trying to understand each person. Each person is very different. I have lots of clients who would love nothing more than to sit a couple hours on the day and drink coffee on the porch and maybe watch a couple of cattle that they have out there or watch the grass grow or go fishing in the pond or whatever. I have lots of clients that's their idea of heaven. And then I have clients that are like, hey, I want to go see 50 countries over the next 10 years. And that obviously costs a lot more money to do. So it kind of depends on whether you want to fish from the $100,000 bass boat or fish from the bank, right? And that's very different based person to person. So it's important to understand who I'm trying to help before I can decide the best way to help them.
Yeah, and Randy, I mean, you're not retired at this point. You don't come into the office as much as you used to, but you're not retired. Your goal was to, travel around the country and try to visit all the national parks, right?
Yeah, we wanted to be able to do what we wanted to do when we wanted to do it, right? And that's what most people want. It's kind of like Jake said, though, are you fishing from the bank or are you fishing from a bass boat? And for me, I love to ride bikes, but I'm not riding a Huffy.
Yeah, I know. And you got a lot of bicycles in the garage, too. And they're not inexpensive. If you're a serious biker, I checked the price of bikes recently because I'm going to get into that just like you. They're not inexpensive when you get into a good bike.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, it's just one of those things, anything that you do, though, that you love to do, especially in today's world. I mean, you can go to Bass Pro Shops, get ready to go fishing.
All right.
And before you know it, you're $1,000 before you get out the door.
Oh, yeah.
Or more.
Mm-hmm.
And especially today, a good lure is $12, $13.
Wow.
I remember growing up when the little Rapalas were $1.75, and we thought,
oh, yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
I remember fishing with a cane pole with my dad. It was a cane fishing pole. And it had some, I don't know if it was string or probably fishing wire, but it just had a hook, and we would dig worms, and we'd go out to the creek or the pond and fish with that. And then I graduated up to the Zebco reel, if you remember those things, too. They weren't that expensive, but yeah, fishing can be as expensive as you want to make it. Bike riding can be as expensive as you want to make it. Traveling to all the state parks can be as expensive as you want to make it. Depends upon whether you're going to be camping or you're going to be staying in the hotels. Now, Randy, you went out and visited some of the state parks. Did it cost more than you thought it was going to cost, or did it cost less?
Well, I'll just tell you this much. My wife is really pretty good at putting together our plans, so we knew exactly what it was going to cost before we left. But it's one of those things, again, we had a plan, and it's no different than going to a state park than it is planning the rest of your life looking forward. It's really no different. The bullet points are the same. What do we want to do when we get there? What's it going to cost? And how do we get back?
Right. Getting there's one thing, getting back. Oh, I forgot about that part of it, too. Hey, we spent all of our money. We got to call Jake and ask for and wire some money to us. Anyway, we're talking about whether or not you're prepared for retirement with Randy, Jake Floyd at Floyd Financial Group. Big one on my mind, Jake and Randy's going to be healthcare costs. I mean, if you're 65, you've got Medicare. But Medicare doesn't cover everything. And what if you're not 65?
Right, for sure. So, if you're under age 65, health insurance is a major concern when you get ready to retire. And so depending on what your situation is there's lots of ways to mitigate the cost of health care prior to age 65. Now, a lot of people say, is Medicare any good? Do I really want to get to 65 and get on Medicare? I will tell you that Medicare, it's got its faults, yes, but honestly, it's a pretty stinking good system. But the thing that really gets costly is if we have some type of dread disease that costs a lot of money, cancer or something like that, or, again, long-term care costs. So, it's been said that a couple 65 could be as much as $300,000 to cover your health care costs from 65 on. So just always something we need to have in the back of our mind. And there's ways to prepare for that. And that's some of the conversations that we always have when people are sitting down trying to design their retirement plan.
Well, a four-letter word in my vocabulary is DEBT. It is debt. How should we look at debt going into retirement? Can we retire with debt, and can we retire with a mortgage?
Yeah, so again, I think at the end of the day, both of those are debt. And the answer is, can I retire with the mortgage? The answer is yes, you can. Many times by the time people get to retirement age, they've paid most of their mortgage down. And so their payment may be $1,500 a month, or maybe it could be even $2,000 a month, but they only owe maybe $50,000. So do we accelerate getting that paid off? Do we lump sum pay that off? Because if we look at, if it takes me $50,000 to pay off my mortgage and I'm paying $2,000 a month, well, how much money can I possibly earn on $50,000? Well, if I make a 10% per annum return, I make $5,000 a year. And I'm paying, if it's $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year. So I'm better off to get rid of that from a cash flow perspective to run my life on a day-to-day basis. But that's not always the case. We need to look at each case. If you got a $300,000 mortgage, it depends on the price of the house and what it's worth. I can't answer that question straight up without knowing the individual and what their individual situation is. But, when we look at regular debt, if we got credit card debt, if we got, car payments, I look at that as this way. People say, I want to just go pay for a car, buy it outright, and I want to pull $70,000 out of my IRA to go do that. Well, that means you're going to have to pull probably $90,000 out of your IRA, at least $85,000,
sure.
Because you got to pay the tax on that money to do that. Where, even in today's world, with interest rates being high, we can go out and we can get 60 months financing on a car at 0%. So we don't have to take that money out, put it into a depreciating asset. We can leave it where it's possibly an appreciating asset, and we didn't have to pay the tax dollars either to buy that car. So everything that we look at, we try to really be smart about decisions we make, and we try to be here to help people just say, here's your options. You can do it this way, or this way. Which one makes the most sense to you? And know that, financially, some things make 100% sense, but emotionally, for some people, it doesn't make sense. And so at the end of the day, they're the boss, and we want to just help them to know what their options are.
Right. Well, when I hear about cars, some people talk about it as an investment. I don't think of it as an investment. It's just an expense. And it is an expense that can be quite expensive. As you said today, with the average car, pushing $50,000. And the moment you drive it off the lot, it's worth $2,000, $3,000 less. So, when you're buying a new car, I would suggest, and it's just me, a 2-year-old pre-owned car. They have these certified pre-owned cars. Let somebody else take the big hit up front. It's always worked for me, and but it is an individual situation. If you got the money and you like the smell of a brand new car, you don't worry about the fact that it's going to be worth less, and you drive it off the lot and you're already $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 down. Go ahead and get that new car. Talking with Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group about being prepared for retirement. The final thing here, what do you think about taking a test run? It's just like the test drive of a car. Is there a way to test drive your retirement?
Oh, yeah. We always look at, by the time we get done with people, from the time we sit down with them, we kind of get to know them first and foremost and really what's important to them. We analyze kind of what they have from Social Security, what they've saved over their lifetime. We develop a plan from there. We look at their budgeting requirements and what they want to do in retirement. And so we really do a test drive before they ever sign anything with us to do any moving of assets or setting up of accounts. We want to know exactly what we're doing and how we're going to support the lifestyle that they desire in retirement.
Are you prepared for retirement? Well, if you've got questions, give us a call here at Floyd Financial Group. We're ready to talk to you. 417-889-7233. Make that call today to set up your appointment for a casual conversation one-on-one with Randy and Jake at Floyd Financial Group. No cost, no obligation, no judgment. 417-889-7233. Also online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Gentlemen, out of time for this week. I've really enjoyed my time with you, but most of all, I want to thank our listeners here. I've enjoyed our time with you here in Springfield, Missouri. So for Randy and Jake, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great first Saturday of March. We'll talk to you again next week right here with another edition of Show Me the Money on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning